Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor Rebush. That's Phil McKenzie.
Oh. I don't know what you're laughing at. Is there something to do with the fact that when you start recording things, it cuts out?
There was a perfect comedic timing. A perfectly long pause. Is he going to reply at all? Is his connection even there? And then the complete robot voice. Anyway, he sounds good now. Phil, thanks for joining me, if that is you, if that is your real name. And thank you all.
Hello, Connor.
Hi.
I am pleased to be back on the show.
And thank you all for joining us as well. A big episode. We are between two major combat sports events on the horizon. Francis Ngannou versus Conor McGregor. And Francis Ngannou versus the other one, Tyson Fury. And we are determined to get deep into this scintillating matchup. We've done our research really for this one, haven't we, Phil?
Oh, so much research.
I have upgraded to a 7 monitor setup. I'm playing the entirety of Francis Ngannou's UFC career across 7 different screens. And, I'm just all the finer details, all of the angles, the MMA angles that, Ngannou is going to bring to bear this weekend. I'm really trying to do a deep dive and understand the subtleties of this, I don't know. The bit's old. We're going to talk about UFC 294. We are going to talk about Fury and Ngannou as well, but pretty briefly, I suspect. And in segment
Ain't much
2.
to say.
Yeah, it's not a lot to say. It'll be a lot more interesting to talk about after the fact. For better or for worse.
You have said this before, and I think you are an optimistic man.
Well, it's like asking me to say a lot about that Cowboy Cerrone movie we watched beforehand.
I could say quite a lot of, yeah.
Beforehand, I wouldn't have known what to say. I'd be like, it looks stupid. But live and after having seen it, I could talk about it for 8 hours straight. Even though I've forgotten the name of it. So next week we are going to have fan favorite and
Project
friend.
Legion, you heathen.
Well, Project Legion, yes. Yeah. What a great movie.
Jesus.
What a great film. Next week we are going to have Kyle McLaughlin on the show to talk about Fury and Ngannou with us. That will be a very good time, I'm sure. And until then, yeah, we'll get to it in segment 2. At the top of the show, as I said, UFC 294, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2, a very strange card. And the Khamzat Chimaev curse, Phil, is we are dealing with subtler and more powerful magics than I had previously imagined possible. Because not only did this man, once again, on a pay-per-view, cause the entire thing to fall apart just before the actual date, but it went deeper than that. There's the fingers of darkness emanating out of Chimaev's body. They swam through the entire undercard, every single prelim. They infected the minds of the officials, who were, of course, brought in by the UFC. That's what happens when they go to Abu Dhabi. Everything was weird on this card, and a lot of it was frankly bad, but in a way that is interesting. Very strange card.
Yeah, it had the kind of unpleasant vibe of what's the guy who David Cronenberg kind of feel to it, you know? Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, but also gross. Mm-hmm. And that was generally what was happening. Like people picking up weird injuries, people picking up weird fouls, people picking up things which were neither. And Yeah, it just wasn't a great fight it wasn't a great card for officiating. And yeah, I like to think that it's a combination of Khamzat Chimaev's ability to destroy things and Magomed Ankalaev's ability to destroy things for himself.
Yeah.
And the combination of those kind of two hexes was just, it was too strong for this card.
Yeah, and Johnny Walker probably played some part as well. I don't know that his magic...
Not a stranger to weird outcomes.
Yeah.
Any man who, successfully dusts his opponent in a cage fight and then badly injures themselves doing the worm afterwards. You can't front on that man's ability to have weird outcomes.
Yeah. So just weird across the board. And this was already with the asterisks we had to keep mentioning last week of these are great fights. I really wish these are great replacement fights at the top of this card. I really wish they weren't on such short notice. We can talk about how much that was or was not a factor. But one thing that was not weird, did not feel uncanny or whatever, is the fact that Islam Makhachev, we talked about what adjustments he might be able to make. Maybe being in the worst position on that front as the guy who's perhaps more dependent on detailed game planning, as a guy who won and therefore maybe felt that he had less to work on. Fuck all that. Islam Makhachev looked amazing in the main event of UFC 294. He continues to impress me more and more with every single performance, I gotta say.
Yeah. And also, everything you could have called for.
Yeah.
Essentially. Everything we mentioned, we were like, I don't know if it's going to be able to do this. I mean, apart from maybe, attacking the back more in clinch situations, but A, it didn't really matter that much.
Yep. Couldn't get there yet.
B, everything else, just, perfect. What more can you say? As I said, it's just been a pleasure to watch him evolve and, continue to put out these remarkable performances against very, very high level competition.
Yeah, no higher level of competition than Alexander Volkanovski, really. Despite the weight class difference, I consider it a huge feather in Makhachev's cap to have beaten Volkanovski last time around, featherweight champ or no. And this time around, he didn't just beat him, he crushed him. Absolutely destroyed him, and it really all came. I mean, it was the thing is, it's a pretty simple fight to break down, I think, because not a lot had happened yet. We hadn't really seen any momentum shifts at all. We saw Volkanovski successfully avoiding being overwhelmed in the wrestling, perhaps having recognized that was an area where he was stronger than he had previously supposed. But we also saw Makhachev building on the fact that he just straight up outstruck Volkanovski in a lot of their last fight. And this time around, I think he completely outstruck him for as long as it lasted. Used his jab really well, but really it was that left kick, which was a great weapon for him last time. It was the same kind of attack that had us so nervous about Volkanovski-Rodriguez. Even though that fight ended up being incredibly one-sided, with maybe one or two hiccups, just shows Makhachev's level that, it's crazy. I think Volkanovski's first career loss was a head kick KO.
Yes.
I think
against a giant southpaw at welterweight.
A southpaw.
So yes. I believe a friend of the show, Ryan Wagner, actually posted this on Twitter. He was basically talked about one of the things that we've talked about all the times, which is that, yes, fighters often, in many ways, don't change that much throughout their career. And, I mean, you can see it. Obviously, this is a very nascent Volkanovski against a even bigger person than Islam Makhachev. But you can definitely see his tendency to just sort of wait and try and guess on the kicking game. That you saw basically, back in the beginning of his career, that you saw in this fight as well.
Yeah. And I think just physically that's always going to be a difficult proposition against a taller, bigger opponent. And I thought Makhachev just like set up the reaction he wanted perfectly. I mean, it wasn't even just the kick. Like in the finishing sequence, I love the setups that he's using in this sequence. He also hits him with a feint and then clubs him with like a wide left hand. That Makhachev just does not adequately defend because I think we talked last week about Makhachev, maybe being able to afford being more aggressive and pressuring more. And then again, I think we also talked about the fact that perhaps Volkanovski could get away with not having to pressure so hard. I think that ended up really being the death sentence here. Because Makhachev was given the initiative, and he did a ton of work with it. He didn't throw a lot of strikes, but he was very active in pressuring and creating threats as long as Volkanovski let him come forward. And feinting, throwing that kick to many different targets before going to the head, and playing other threats off of the left side, namely the like overhand left or wide left to the head. And Volkanovski just guessed wrong, basically. I'm not even sure he guessed that wrong. It was just that he didn't guess accurately enough to actually block the kick that surely he suspected a high kick was coming at some point. But it just flew over his guard and just bounced off the top of his head. And he ducked into it, which Makhachev saw him doing several times while he was feinting. You can see, this is a knockout where you can see the groundwork being laid by the fighter who delivers it in like the 30 seconds preceding. You can see the sort of calculation happening in his head.
Yeah, he's already landed at least one glancing head kick in this fight already.
Yeah.
He knows that it's there. Yeah, I mean, so this is one of those things where I find myself looking at the fight and I find myself thinking, obviously you can be like, well, this is a preparation issue for Volkanovski. Maybe he would have been able to prepare more. But I'm just not that convinced that it really makes that much of a difference at this point.
Yeah.
I think it would have made a difference. Because the main thing I think is that I found was kind of troubling me as someone who had picked Volkanovski in the run-up to this one, which was crystallized when I saw like the tweet from Jack Slack just right before the fight started, where he basically said, "I hope Volkanovski's learned something more from the open stance fight than the like stance changing right hook, something along those lines."
Yep.
And yeah, that was sort of the thing that kept concerning me, is the fact that Volkanovski beat a big, powerful southpaw kicker in Yair Rodriguez, but he beat it by bullying through space into the clinch and taking him down. And then at the end, it was when, he got hurt and then he just rushed him and then knocked him out with like a big right hand, and amongst other things. And at no point in that fight did I think Alexander Volkanovski is using or looks capable of using the attritional, lead hand low kick game, which defines his striking game, which makes it, potentially the best striking game in the UFC. And that's the thing. I don't know if he has it in him, even despite the preparation, any preparation he might have for Makhachev, to have that game against a big southpaw. This was sort of what Rian Wagner was alluding to after the fight as well.
Yeah, I think
it just might not be there. I mean, this is the thing. The weird thing about this fight is that at the end of it, after two fights, you find yourself thinking the exact opposite to what you thought at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is that, like, it looks like Alexander Volkanovski's best chance against Islam Makhachev is to treat him like Yair Rodriguez and constantly jump into the clinch against him. That is insane.
Yeah.
That's mad.
And also, like, let's be real. even if that's true, it's not a very good chance of winning, is it?
No, it really isn't.
Because like
he can clearly still, if he does that, and if he has that approach, he can probably still buzz him if they fight a whole bunch of times.
Sure.
I still don't think Islam has the best chin in the world and so on. I don't think either of these guys, frankly, are hyper durable considering their competition. One of the things which makes both of them actually pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like after looking at this, you're like, is that how Volkanovski should try and win the fight? He has to clinch Islam Makhachev and tire him out because he can't strike with him?
Yeah.
This is so weird to be coming to these kind of conclusions.
It really is. And I think we seriously underrated talking about this both last weekend and right after the first one, or misevaluated the extent to which Volkanovski's sort of weirdly ugly striking in the first fight was simply a product of the wrestling threat and everything. Like, I'm sure that was a factor. Mm-hmm. I really do think you can see the process of Volkanovski sort of realizing he can actually wrestle with Makhachev over the course of that fight. But it's the fucking southpaw thing. Yeah. And I just think we just weren't willing. I mean, obviously we love Volkanovski. I just think we weren't all that willing to entertain the idea that Volkanovski could in fact be victim to one of our most frequently mocked fighter traits, which is that his jab isn't there against the southpaw.
His game work against southpaws, yeah.
Yeah, his jab isn't there, and that's what happened. Maybe I'm sure he listens to the show, so clearly he was taking our advice when he was like, "Well, I don't have to go crazy and pressure the whole time." But I said that, Alex, and I want you to know that I'm sorry for misleading you. I know you're listening, but I said that with the assumption that if you were fighting off the back foot, you would be able to maintain some initiative.
I'm pretty sure we did also recommend that he had to take lots of low damage attritional wins.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we were saying, that he had to jab and low kick a whole bunch and not do the giant sweeping right hand.
Yeah, but more than anything, the jab. Yeah. He needs the jab. That is how you survive when somebody is walking you down and feinting you and giving you all these threats. You have to grab little moments where you make them respect your position, and that the jab does that. It's your lead hand. It's the closest to the target. It's the quickest shot to throw. It's the least committal. It is the tool that grabs you just a moment of respect so that the opponent doesn't just get to spend their entire time pressuring you, coming up with ideas from this very mentally relaxed, privileged position, that they don't just get to generate ideas and look at your defense and say, okay, how do I get that defense out so that next time I can punish it? You have to make them worry. You have to make them react to you. And the jab is how you do that. And it turns out that I just think Volkanovski's jab isn't there against southpaws, which is a trait shared by so many much worse fighters that I simply didn't think it could really be that much of a factor for Volkanovski, even though the evidence is there in other southpaw fights, including his last one with Makhachev. I just completely misinterpreted that weird shifting striking he was doing.
Yep. That's basically just it. I think he's always going to be at a disadvantage against big southpaw strikers, and he's just fortunate there are big southpaw kickers, and he's fortunate that there's only really one in his division who is not very good in many other ways.
Yeah.
And other than that, I suspect, we'll see Ilia Topuria fight him again soon. Fight him soon, and I think then we'll just see, old Volkanovski back. And I think we'll see Ilia Topuria just getting inside low kicked a whole bunch.
Not a fight I'm entirely confident Volkanovski will easily win, by the way. I think that's a very dangerous dicey matchup.
What if he does inside low kick, though?
Well, his jab and his inside low kick will be there, so I feel much more comfortable.
Just inside low kick. I don't really see the problem. But yeah, I mean, I do find myself concerned about like Volkanovski's post-fight statements. Is that he's sounding like the pressure is getting to him in a way which he's not actually fully like cognizant of.
Yeah, that was troubling
because like twice he was just like, "Get me back in camp. Get me back in camp. I need to stay busy.
Yeah,
to do my head in when I'm not in camp." And I was just like, ooh.
Yeah.
And the second time he said it, he was practically breaking down in tears when he was saying that, and I was just like, I don't know if that's the right thing to say, Volk. I think that it sounds like the pressure, that the pressure is building up, and that the camps allow you to like set it aside in favor of something which is more immediate. But
yeah, and even if it's not the pressure of being like the reigning champion and like top pound for pound fighter in the world, like even if it's not that, if it's just something more a more permanent issue with Volkanovski that is just becoming harder to deal with as he gets older, as neuroses often do. Clearly it was like he was like, "I'm not good for myself when I'm not busy." I'm like, what does that mean? Is he like, he's just like depressed when he's not in the camp? He's like what's going on? Yeah, that was troubling.
I mean, it sounds like it, but obviously the issue is that he's going to have to deal with that one day. And one day which is not, particularly far away, probably.
Yeah, he's, what is he, 36?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, how long your life is and how long you fight in the cage. So, yeah, on one hand, he's like, of course I'll be, back in January. I'll fight Ilia Topuria then. I'm like, I do find myself thinking, like, you might want to get this sorted.
Yeah.
At the cost of, a bigger, better legacy, because we... I still don't regret the fact that they had this fight. I'm still very glad I got to see it. I wish it could have gone on for longer, but it was, again, it was two guys willing to reach for greatness, and I'm glad that they both did. But yeah, Volk, I'm concerned about. I would like, in an ideal world, I would like Bisping and GSP to have a sit down with Volk. Just be like, here's how to have a life with, it isn't, constantly being in the pressure cooker all the time. And let them both give him their experiences on it.
Alexander, have you considered hot tubbing with several attractive women?
Was reading a book on paleontology.
That's the only way to stop the aliens from getting you? Yeah. Probably a sit down with a veteran champion who's been through it. Yeah. But yeah, not to take anything away from Islam Makhachev. I mean,
no.
There were elements to this.
I don't think it's really a short notice thing.
No, I kind of agree with you.
In retrospect,
I kind of agree with you. It's not like it's the first time we've seen Volkanovski knocked down with a head kick early in a fight.
Nope.
Full camp. This very well could have happened. And I do still think Volkanovski is like better suited to take this kind of matchup on short notice than somebody like Makhachev. But Makhachev just didn't need the prep. Like he seemed really confident. His striking looked great. Didn't even really have the need to throw like a lot of combinations or do a lot of really fancy stuff. It was just, here's enough of a wrestling threat to keep you thinking about it. Otherwise, you're going to let me pressure? Cool. I am going to feint you. I'm going to poke you. I'm going to fire the weapon that will ultimately knock you out to the legs, to the body. And then I'm just going to like, it reminded me of, very, very similar to the head kick knockout scored by Roman Kopylov recently. Not his last fight, but the one just before that. I cannot remember the guy's name. Guy who's not very good. But very similar setup with just like what is essentially a naked high kick. It was Claudio Ribeiro. Basically just a naked high kick, but set up with kicks thrown to other targets and a series of feints. Just really, really confusing the timing and clocking the reaction. And as I said before, you can see Volkanovski, his instinctive reaction to a strike where he's not quite sure what it is to kind of drop levels, get into like a lower athletic position. He keeps a pretty tight guard, but if you're looking to set him up with a really quickly thrown high kick, that is exactly the reaction that Kopylov got out of Ribeiro. Saw the exact same thing. He feinted a couple feints, like confusing, went like threatened to the body. Then a feint upstairs. What's coming? What's coming? And once he'd confused him enough and knew that he had him just ready to react to whatever was coming next, he just, full confidence, just sent the high kick in. No need for further setup. Don't have to put a punch in front of it. Don't have to hide it with like an extended hand or anything. Just boot him in the head because you've got him biting. That just shows the power of initiative, the power of feints and threats in playing havoc with a fighter's defenses. Brilliant and principled and simple, like much of Makhachev's game and much of his striking, more and more. Just not flashy, not crazy, right to the point, and very effective.
Yep. Don't really care about these things, but I suppose he probably is the pound-for-pound number one now.
Probably.
And,
yeah.
At least probably should be, and like is really like maybe for me like neck and neck with Khabib for the greatest lightweight of all time at this point.
Yeah,
I think 1 or 2 more wins, and I don't have a problem saying it.
Sure, no, he is unbelievably good, Islam Makhachev. All right, well, I think that's all we have to say about that one. We can take a break, and when we come back, I suppose we have to talk about Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury, which we're gonna do, and then the rest of this card: Khamzat Chimaev, Kamaru Usman, Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker. There's a lot to say. Undoubtedly, we will probably trend into bonus episode territory because I think to fully comprehend the weirdness of this card, we're going to have to delve even into some of the less consequential prelims, just to sort of give you an idea for what set the tone for the night. But we are certainly going to get into Fury Ngannou and then Chimaev Usman after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to the show. Francis Ngannou. Tyson Fury. Better than McGregor Mayweather? Phil, to you.
Yes. I'm more glad that it is happening than I was that McGregor Mayweather was happening.
Because I feel nothing about this fight, if I'm being honest. I feel absolutely nothing.
Yeah, sure. So that's better than McGregor Mayweather.
I suppose that is true. Okay. Because it was a very enervating experience, the build-up to McGregor Mayweather.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was just like... Because ideally, you would, in there's a world where you're like, I would like to be the person that people are talking to who don't normally care about this stuff, about, combat sports and stuff like that. But then, in its own monkey's paw way, it was like, people will now be talking to you about this, about the stupidest combat sports thing that's happened in the last couple decades.
I don't want anyone to talk to me about combat sports. Well, I mean,
Fair
actually,
enough.
if a stranger, or like a vague acquaintance starts talking about boxing, I'm a lot more happy to talk about that, even though I know comparatively a lot less about the current state of boxing than I do MMA and specifically the UFC. I don't want to talk about MMA to anyone. And so, yeah, it was a very chilling experience to have everybody come up and like strangers want to talk to me about Conor McGregor. I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and at least this one, it represents Ngannou's ability to get a giant payday outside of the UFC. He is actually outside of the UFC. This isn't some, handshaky deal where everyone's just going to be making vile amounts of money, and Dana will be making vile amounts of money, and Conor will be as well. And so, yeah, from like just a purely, and also, yeah, no one is on the understanding that this is like some transformational thing which is going to be happening, and you don't have all the breathless morons on the internet just being like, "Oh my god, it's the innovation of the next level of the curve of human history."
We'll
and
have
fighting
Robin
is
Black
gonna be
out
revealed.
there. Robin Black out there waxing poetic about the paradigm shift that is occurring before our eyes.
None of that. Everyone knows, and I said this before, everyone knows that if Ngannou knocks him out, it's because he punches hard. There's nothing more or less to it.
Yep.
There's no innovative, secret techniques he does. His touch butt in the park is not going to have enabled him to find the secret ow of combat. It's going to be because he hits hard.
If Ngannou has a sense of humor, he will start his media workout doing that bizarre arm flaily thing that McGregor was doing back then.
100%.
Where he sort of like turned the Vince McMahon walk into a workout.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I do.
I don't think he does that anymore. Maybe he does. I don't know. So embarrassing. Yeah, so it's I just don't I'm happy for Francis. I'm mad at Tyson Fury, if anything.
Yeah, that's the other thing about this one is that the Mayweather fight didn't stop.
Yeah. Mayweather wasn't avoiding any
Mayweather from taking any entertaining fights.
Yeah, he wasn't avoiding. He was retired. I mean, he wasn't avoiding any other meaningful matchups. He had already fought Manny Pacquiao. Took way too long, but hey, he did it. He won. It was just like a fuck around for him and an opportunity to make huge cash against a completely untested opponent. So why wouldn't he take that? Tyson Fury should be fighting Alexander Usyk. He should not be fighting a former UFC fighter, an MMA fighter with zero boxing experience. He should be fighting the other best heavyweight in the world. A fight that I think everybody wants to see. They have tentatively confirmed that it is going to happen after this. I'll believe it when I see it. But hey, good for Francis. As for the fight itself, I mean, you had one point you made earlier about a difference between this and the McGregor-Mayweather matchup.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is that there was one balancing factor in Mayweather-McGregor that served to at least partially bridge the giant gulf of skill and experience between the two fighters.
Yeah.
And that's that Conor McGregor is like twice as big as Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
That's just not true here. I mean, we are essentially talking the fact that, it's a heavyweight, so that all the participants are at a much lower level of skill. Francis Ngannou is a much worse boxer than Conor McGregor. Tyson Fury is a much worse boxer than Floyd Mayweather.
That's true.
But which means that there is just inherently there's more volatility to what's going to be happening. But I don't think this goes any way to bridging the fact that there was a large physical gulf between Mayweather and McGregor, and in the direction of the MMA fighter, and that's just not going to be here. In the same way, it'll be there a tiny bit in the fact that Ngannou is a harder hitting, more natural athlete in some ways than Fury. But even then, it's not much of a I wouldn't actually say that, despite the fact that he looks, like a far better athlete, he isn't actually a much better athlete than Tyson Fury. But yeah, more to the point, he's just not bigger than him. He's smaller than him.
Yeah. Had Mayweather even... What was Mayweather-McGregor fought at? What division?
I can't remember.
Was it 154 or was it bigger than that?
153.
Okay.
Or at least, that's... So,
and Floyd had fought at 154 is light middleweight or super welterweight in boxing.
Yeah.
So it's funny that he contractually made McGregor come in slightly below the light middleweight limit.
It was light middleweight. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had fought there a few times before against Miguel Cotto, against Canelo, who was also huge. And a very good boxer. But yeah, I mean, McGregor is an MMA fighter, and he cuts like an MMA fighter. The fact that when you saw those two in the ring together, you're like, how is one of these men fighting at essentially the same weight class as the other in his primary sport? 145 is in fact 2 pounds lighter than the welterweight weight limit at which Mayweather spent most of his late career. So it was a guy who definitely, if he were a boxer, probably would have never, ever fought at 147 to begin with. Francis Ngannou is big and bulky, but significantly shorter, in both stature and length of limb than Tyson Fury. And, you used the same qualifier to say that Ngannou is worse than McGregor and Fury is worse than Mayweather. You said much worse and much worse. But I think there is a wider gulf here between those two. Because Tyson Fury is, boxing's the same as MMA. Heavyweight sucks for the most part. But for a modern heavyweight fighter, a super heavyweight if anything, Tyson Fury is actually quite good. He's surprisingly nimble. He has defense. He has an excellent jab. He has a lot of technical abilities to commend him as a heavyweight boxer. Francis Ngannou...
But I would still happily class him as much worse than
I agree.
Mayweather,
I'm just saying that this doesn't... I want to make it clear that this doesn't, bring him down to... no question. He's a heavyweight. He's going to be much, much worse than Floyd Mayweather. No question. But he's still significantly better at boxing than Francis Ngannou, significantly.
Oh, yeah.
No question about that either. Francis Ngannou, I just don't think is very good at anything, really, except for being...
So, yeah, this is the other reason why, obviously, we don't have all the breathless... a big reason why we don't have all the breathless, was it Uber comparisons? People are like,
oh God.
It is how we can see that, taxis started here and now we have Uber.
McGregor is to boxing what Uber is to taxi. You mean worse and less regulated and
yeah.
He's
just
boxing
regulatory arbitrage.
He's boxing with an app. Cool.
Yeah, it's that obviously McGregor went into the Mayweather fight off an absolutely scintillating stand-up performance.
Yeah.
Against, it was Eddie Alvarez, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Where he just looked incredible and untouchable, and, people made, I'm sure people made, Super Saiyan gifs of him punching Eddie.
Surely.
And, Ngannou's last fight was one against Cyril Gane, where his striking looked really bad and he had to out-wrestle him.
Yeah.
He just about managed to do that.
They both looked terrible. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. Almost certainly Tyson Fury is going to fight him. Almost certainly it won't be that fun to watch for a good stretch either.
And why would it be?
Right.
Yeah, I don't, again, as with Mayweather, Tyson Fury would be insane to take any risks.
Yeah.
He should just, jab him and clinch him and jab him and clinch him and jab him and clinch him and, and then once he's knackered, knock him out. It's the same basic game plan, but...
I mean, Mayweather did take risks in that he was very aggressive against McGregor.
Eventually.
Uncharacteristically aggressive.
Yeah, because he's a very, very clever fighter, and he realized
and then
what McGregor's really bad at and what McGregor is very good at.
Yeah, it's really funny how
he's very good at is picking people off at the end of his reach with sneaky shots.
Really funny how the great boxer's ability to just try things out yielded like all the game planning he would ever need to fight somebody like McGregor. He's like, oh, he hates being pressured. Like he clocked that within like 3-4 rounds. He hates this.
Yes.
Okay, great. This isn't how I fight, but this is what I'm going to do. I know how. Tyson Fury probably will do a lot of punch and clutch. That's my guess. That is my guess. All right. Anyway, we're picking him. Like I said, if not great for analytical purposes, I think this will be a lot more fun to talk about when we have some actual material to work with. So I will just say once again that we're having our good buddy Kyle on the show next week. Kyle McLaughlin. Check out his podcast, Combat Chronicles. Does his research really, really well. And enough to make up for his personality, even. And he's going to come on next week to talk about Fury and Ngannou. I think that's enough for our purposes for now. Shall we talk about the co-main event of UFC 294?
Let's do it.
Khamzat Chimaev, the man largely responsible for the strange, the plague of weirdness that fell over this card. He took on the other short notice championship level replacement fighter here in Kamaru Usman, his first fight at middleweight. And yeah, I mean, I'll let you lead us off, Phil. We were worried about Usman looking old, yada yada. What did you feel about this performance?
You end up with almost exactly the same conclusions as you came away with from the fight against Gilbert Burns. It's really difficult not to come out with the same sort of qualified confusion.
Yes.
Because on the one hand, Chimaev is clearly a gritty dude. He's clearly immensely overwhelming. Even
his physicality.
Because Gilbert Burns is one thing. Kamaru Usman is, I think, another.
Yeah, and there's the balancing factor that I do think probably we are seeing a deteriorating Kamaru Usman.
100%, yes, of course.
This definitely looked like an older Kamaru than we have. I mean, this looked in line with what we saw in the Edwards fight. It sort of confirmed for me that this guy is starting to lose his touch, losing some of his snap and his speed and his agility. But that's equaled out by the fact that, as you were going to say, I think Kamaru is a substantially better wrestler even than Gilbert, who is a good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And still, if anything, Chimaev's wrestling was more troubling to Kamaru than it was for Gilbert Burns, who kind of fought super, super hard early and largely shut Chimaev's wrestling out after the first few minutes of the fight.
I think a lot of this was due to the fact that Gilbert's first level takedown defense did not actually hold up against Chimaev a lot of the time, but it was the fact that he was still able to scramble and fight out of situations much more, readily than
that is absolutely true.
Which, is definitely one of the things you might necessarily expect to see from a world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy versus a wrestler, is that the wrestler's going to be better at stopping the initial shot. But once he gets into bad grappling situations, he can really get stuck there. That is.
Go on.
That is broadly what we saw in this fight.
He wasn't even that good at stopping the initial shot, though.
It wasn't the initial shot that got him, right?
It was twice.
At least in the first round.
He got taken down cleanly twice. off of just a straight double leg. And I mean, Chimaev has a great shot. Like, he's really, really quick with the level change. As you said, his physicality is insane. He is he's just a monster. Even here up at middleweight against a guy we noted last week is historically a very strong and big welterweight. Somebody who's more or less Chimaev's size. I mean, he was like an inch or two shorter, but he didn't look tiny next to him.
That was one of the things when I was looking at this, I was like, I remember we looked this up and it says that Chimaev is 2 inches taller than Kamaru Usman. Chimaev is not 2 inches taller than Kamaru Usman.
No.
He's clearly about 4. But yeah.
Yeah, they looked more or less the same, but Chimaev's speed, I mean, he has the athleticism of a younger man. And the speed and power and timing of his shot, he just bowled Kamaru off his feet, just gathered both of his legs together and tipped him over twice. So that to me looks like probably Kamaru getting old, but also Chimaev being just a physical specimen with a couple really, really technically effective elements to his game. The double leg shot being one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Usman sprawled. I mean, the most punishing one for Usman was the first round, and he sprawled on that. But it was just the fact that Chimaev kept attacking the single leg, jumped around to a body lock, and then hooked the leg and essentially just controlled the back from there.
Yep.
He is just a physically overwhelming, incredibly aggressive grappler in these kind of situations and that Usman being fully on the defensive was just not able to, just gave Chimaev the chance to to continue attacking him.
Yeah.
Until one of those wrestling attacks worked. Similar to there's a weird example of this would be Charles Oliveira against Will Brooks. Will Brooks, very good defensive wrestler, but Charles Oliveira just went berserk on him until something worked.
Yeah, and but the other thing was Usman showing, and maybe part of this was surely the short notice and everything, but another quality we see from aging fighters often. And one which I think we definitely saw in his last fight with Leon Edwards, not pulling the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I mean, Kamaru has always been, I think, a bit of an overthinker as a fighter. Probably should have been predictable that this would be the kind of path his decline would take him down. But there was a lot of nothing in this fight. Which is all the more disappointing. And I'm not knocking Kamaru for this. I thought it was a credible performance on short notice and everything, and respect to him for taking it. But just disappointing as somebody who regards him very highly as a fighter, to see that once he did start to get going in round 3, he was able to do a lot more to Chimaev than Gilbert Burns was. I mean, he didn't get the knockdown. Chimaev wasn't going as apeshit with the striking, but he just started straight up outboxing him. But he didn't get there until very, very late in the fight. And there were, even in round 3, there was a long stretch at the beginning of the round, and then after the first salvo, where he was just not doing anything. Not pressuring, not feinting, not even the sort of suggestion that he might do something offensive, just waiting. And that is something we see from a lot of fighters as they get older, that they get much, much pickier with the risks that they're willing to take and the shots they're willing to throw, and just the output dwindles.
Yeah. I mean, this was and again, this was in a similar way to sort of the Islam Volkanovski thing. You're like, how much is this? Is the fact that Chimaev's activity dropped off so much due to the fact that he busted his wrist? And how much of it is just Chimaev being Chimaev? I think it's got to be kind of both of those things.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're learning is that he has an immensely fast shot. Well, we're not really learning. We kind of knew it. We know it now. We knew it before the fight. He has an immensely fast shot. He is a phenomenal grappler. He's a physical force. there is no connective tissue between his striking game and his wrestling game.
Yeah. There's a little bit in like the switch up in that first layer, maybe, but, and obviously, I wrote about his ground and pound last week. If you didn't read that article, go over to the Bloody Elbow Substack and check it out. The Science of Smash, Khamzat Chimaev's ground and pound. That's a link between, striking in this very unique MMA, phase. But, I think what we're really learning is that Khamzat Chimaev is a lot closer to Zabit Magomed Sharipov than we would like him to be. That he is a super overwhelming fighter, so athletic and confident and aggressive. It seems in the first round of any fight that he can literally do anything he wants to his opponent. And I think that is broadly true. He is that kind of force. He comes with that level of aggression, that fearlessness. He knows he can do anything he wants, and that is the result he gets. He just completely overwhelms people, and if that does not either finish them or put them in such a compromised position that he can easily just get back to square one at the start of round 2, he sort of gets tired and runs out of ideas.
Yeah.
I think we saw that against Gilbert, and we saw it here.
Yeah, I think that's broadly true. I think Zabit was a weirder case because, Zabit had good defense and a sort of well-constructed game, I think.
Yeah. Just in
whereas and it just he just couldn't maintain it.
Yeah.
If you gave him Yair's cardio or even Khamzat's cardio, he would be incredibly good. I think the issue with Khamzat is that the game is just, he will strike a bunch and then he will try and just time a takedown, but his strikes do not look like his takedowns. He does not really strike into the clinch so much.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like we said, his striking has absolutely no defense associated with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
This was one of the more frustrating things about the fight if you were watching from, Usman's perspective, which was obviously that, you're just sitting there you could just hit him! And then suddenly he realizes it in round 3.
That's what I mean. In round 3, it's I just
walk up to him and just punch him in the face.
Yeah. If I just throw the jab, it will land. Yeah, he discovered that way too late for it to be enough to win the fight. But that is just true. Yeah, and I don't mean to over-compare their games. More so that Chimaev seems to be, unfortunately, one of these fighters who is just sort of weirdly fated to drop off in a competitive fight. If the fight is competitive, if the person not only survives early but then manages to establish themselves, he will drop off. Almost seeming like no matter what happens. Because it's not like this one, the Gilbert fight.
Conor McGregor is actually is actually a good example here.
Very, very good comparison. Yeah, that's better. Because it's not just the pace. This was not a high-paced fight. Even in the first round. Because, and I thought this was
dominating it.
Yeah, he was dominating it, but dominating it, he wasn't able to crush Kamaru. I actually respected this decision from Kamaru. He realized he was in a terrible position and probably was wary of his own fitness coming in on short notice. And rather than going insane, he simply, you could see, made a decision. Okay, this round's a goner.
Yep.
I'm going to simply keep my neck hidden. I'm going to maintain 2 very strong posts as long as he's on my back. I'm not going to let him break me down no matter what happens, and he can bounce all the little knuckle shots he wants off the sides of my head. He's not getting to my neck, and he's not getting to my chin, and he's not improving his position. He just let the round go by in a bad, clearly losing, but survivable state. And so Chimaev wasn't even able to go apeshit, trying to get him out of there. He didn't get a ton of scrambles. He wasn't in position to throw these fearsome full power ground and pound shots that he can throw. He wasn't able to dump all the energy he normally would in a round 1. And even so, his output was as low as Kamaru's in round 2 and lower in round 3.
Yeah. admittedly, broken hand and so on.
Sure.
But yes, I do think that this is simply who he is.
Yeah, I think so.
To at least some extent. You know what? I scored this a draw.
I actually thought a draw would have been
this
the right score. I agree.
I scored this 10-8 first round. Obviously, nothing happened apart from Chimaev just crushing Usman from top position. Again, not the most damaging, but like nothing else happened. Like the second round, an absolute nothing burger of a round. You could score this 10-10 if you wanted. Usman landed like one low kick and one punch, and I was like, oh, that's not for me.
Usman landed one really impactful 1-2 right towards the end of the round.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Clean, powerful shots.
I guess someone's won that round, and then Chimaev got a late takedown, which he did nothing with, and I was like,
yep.
Okay, that's the round where I guess Usman should win it, and Chimaev will win it. But yeah, I was like, I think it probably should be an Usman round, and then round 3 is an easy Usman round, obviously. And I was like, it's a draw. But yeah, I don't think Usman had really, again, despite the whole courageous, stepping up on short notice against the one person no one wants to fight, he sort of has no one to blame for himself not winning this.
Yeah.
Apart from himself, because he really could have done if he just jabbed him.
If he had, he would have at least gotten the draw. I didn't see, I think two of the scorecards, because it was a split or a majority decision. Yeah. One judge did score it a draw correctly, I think. And then 2 judges gave Chimaev basically rounds 1 and 2, both with a 10-8 in round 1. Those are, reasonably good scorecards. At least they all got the 10-8.
Yes, that is very much a relief, especially given the general officiating shit show which hovered over this event.
And we will talk about that in the very next segment, at least part of it. But, that round was so close in round 2 because of inactivity that if Usman had just thrown 5 more committed strikes, he probably would have picked up that round on those scorecards and would have just at least gotten a draw.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Yeah, it goes to show. I think I was writing an article about this back in the day. I never actually finished it, but that. When I was talking, it was one about Holly Holm and Conor McGregor, is that it's not just that it's that the promotional structure of the UFC basically mandates that you have people like this as the big stars. Someone who just wipes people out instantaneously.
Yeah.
And in both of those cases, they, stormed to titles and then flamed out incredibly badly.
Yeah.
And you can see echoes of both of those fighters in Chimaev at this point. I think he's definitely a lot mentally tougher than either one of them.
Yep.
Maybe. Conor could be tough in his own way. But
I think
he's still
so.
seeing that same kind of, massive, devastating, overwhelming burst. And then, be like, oh no, what's next?
Yeah, the crazy thing is, they were talking about a title shot after this. I thought Dricus was getting the next shot.
Dricus 100% deserves to. You can't give him
They were talking about.
You can't give him a title shot off a welterweight coming off the. Coming off the couch.
They were talking about that on the broadcast. We'll see. I'm sure they would love to give Chimaev the shot, but the thing is, it's not actually difficult to see Chimaev losing to Strickland.
Yeah.
Because, he'll beat him in the first round.
Strickland will jab him.
And then what? Right? And then what? And if Strickland just keeps him at distance and jabs him, it's not at all difficult to see him losing that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he's just really limited in this peculiar UFC star way. Anyway, I thought, a credible performance from Usman. I thought it did show his age, but if I were him, I'd be kicking myself looking at that third round and how swimmingly it went. Mm-hmm. And just thinking, man, I could have just punched him some more. It would have landed. He doesn't know how to not get hit.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's that. Speaking of officiating shit show, let's take another break. When we come back, Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker, and whatever else we have time for after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker was the third fight from the top or the bottom, depending on how you choose to look at it, of this UFC 294 main card. And
he did it! He did it! He found a way.
What the fuck, Phil? What is wrong with this man? He should be so good. Why?
He just lost to Paul. He lost to Paul Craig back in the day, and he just got a taste of it. He was just like, you know what? What if my entire career was just spotted with stupid ass shit like this?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. We envisioned a shitty version of this fight, which looked like it might be materializing, I have to say. We were like, Johnny Walker's going to be big giant kick man. He's going to run away. He's going to do lots of low kicks. And sure enough, that was his approach. But he couldn't contain. Go on.
You know what? I will say one thing. This fight was far more exciting than I thought it was going to be.
Sure. Largely due to the antics of Johnny Walker, which were both fun and also like doomed him. He could not contain the essential Johnny Walker-ness. He tried to sucker Ankalaev with a fake body shot reaction.
Why wouldn't you do that? Like, that's clearly something which people, like, this man just radiates. You should just pretend like you've been badly hurt against him. Everyone just feels the urge.
Yeah. That's, oh my God, I didn't even think of that.
Against the most boring, emotionless man in the world, both Iwan Kutalaba and Johnny Walker have separately come to the idea, like, I'm gonna fake this boring-ass man out. Like,
I did not
he's gonna emotionally overreact, and then Magomed Ankalaev is just like, what is this foolish person doing? I will find a way to lose, but it will not be like this.
You don't decide how I lose. That didn't even occur to me. That this is yet another extremely bizarre Ankalaev fight, which pivots around the opponent pretending to be hurt. Wow. Mm-hmm. There's some poetry to that. So yeah,
he's got form, this man. The weirdest form imaginable. For just like an incredibly, as I said, like incredibly vanilla, extremely skilled wrestle boxer. You would not expect to have this incredibly bizarre career.
No. That's the light heavyweight in him, you know? He doesn't like radiate the sort of like hyper athletic, moronic, just brute physical swang and bang style that sort of predominates in this division. But he sort of creates it around himself one way or the other. That's the essential light heavyweightness. Anyway, Johnny Walker was pretty effectively kicking Ankalaev, who did not look to have learned anything about checking kicks.
Or indeed about enforcing his wrestling game early.
Or that.
Against people who clearly cannot wrestle.
Didn't even think about it until Johnny Walker literally fell down, because what happened is Walker was doing this, it was working pretty well. I'm like, man, he might actually do this stupid, terrible win by crippling Ankalaev. And then he got hit to the body, Probably it was a shot that he felt. I mean, I do love the fact that Ankalaev throws straight backhand shots to the body. And it was a good punch, and probably Johnny felt it, and then he like hunched over, playing up the fact that he was hurt by it, and tried to do a flying knee, which to be fair, did almost land. I mean, we're talking about a matter of 3 or 4 inches from landing, but he almost got the reaction he was looking for. He almost connected. The cost of this goofery was that he then lost his balance and immediately gave up a takedown that Ankalaev would have never created of his own volition. So he got Ankalaev to start beating him, having basically won the first few minutes of the fight by doing the only thing that was effective. And then Ankalaev started to wrestle. I'm like, okay, well, he's been tricked into winning this fight. And Ankalaev said, no, not like this.
You little bitch, who do you think? I will not be tricked into winning a fight.
He got Johnny Walker up to one knee. He was in like a 3-point position, and he blasted him with a knee to the face, a clearly illegal shot. And then what happened after that? I mean, there was, you talk about it. I can't even find my footing with this.
So the ref is like, we should bring this, we should look for the concussion protocol. Let's bring in this doctor that we already know is the stupidest doctor in the world.
Yeah.
And stupidest doctor in the world, it's up to Johnny Walker and it's like, where are you? And Johnny Walker's like, the desert? And the guy's like, fights off, guys. And that's the end.
Johnny Walker's like, I don't know, Africa?
Johnny Walker who is like clearly visibly pretty fine.
That's the thing.
After he gets kneed in the face, it's not even like, we're talking Aljo Yarn, right?
Yeah.
He's immediately after he gets kneed in the face, he's just like, hey, why would you do that? That was stupid. Like, he looks...
That's the thing. It is his immediate reaction. He gets hit. It's a solid shot. I mean, fair call to the ref. I don't think the ref screwed up here. He was like, this dude took a flush knee to the face. I mean,
he did screw up if he'd seen anything from the worst doctor in the world.
He'd screwed up in not giving any...
if he knew who he was calling to the cage at that point.
Yeah, he screwed up in not giving any pushback. I mean, like, I know it is the doctor's call, but if you're the ref in that position, maybe be like, are you sure? You're about to call off a fight. He seems all right. But it's Johnny Walker's immediate reaction. He takes this big shot, and as you said, his eyes aren't clouded. He sees the ref coming in, and he starts making like what the fuck motions, and being annoyed. He looks fine.
Yeah, this is one of the best things about it is that this ref comes up to Johnny Walker, who looks visibly fine. He's like, "Where are you?" And yeah, like Johnny Walker, he's again, we've talked about how incredibly stressful fighting is. As in, the famous thing of like Dominic Cruz not being able to remember anything about his own fight.
Yeah.
Johnny Walker is not going to be able to remember shit at this point. He's running on an absolute cocktail of like fight or flight hormones and all this kind of stuff. Don't ask him anything even remotely complicated.
As the doctor,
he's going to give you an answer like that.
As the doctor is talking to him, he is formulating like a cartwheel kick KO that he's going to do to Ankalaev. Mm-hmm. He's not focused on. And like I wasn't sure at first because the broadcast team, they played it back with the audio. The doctor appears to ask him, what round is it and where are you? Mm-hmm. And I can see if you don't know what's happening, why you would register Walker's reaction to these questions as him being confused. But I just think he just didn't care and didn't realize that the fight was about to get stopped.
Yeah. And also, fighters just lose track of what round it is all the time.
Yeah, that's also not a good question.
It's just blindingly stressful, to the extent that you are in, the conscious mind just isn't working at this point. But yeah, I love this doctor. He comes in, he comes in to Johnny Walker, who is completely fine, asks him bizarre questions, then it's just like, no, the fight is over. And then previously in the card, walks up to Victor Henry who is lying on the floor, like, dry heaving and sobbing in agony.
Yeah.
He's like...
It did not hit your
balls,
ball.
though, did it?
It didn't hit your ball.
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This man's visual diagnostic ability, let's just say, leaves something to be desired.
I think this is just a thing that he was put into. This man is, maybe he's a decent doctor. He is not equipped to be in a position of this kind of authority. Because he was far too eager to, like, insert himself into something that, clearly, I don't think this is a guy who understands combat sports particularly well. He was like, oh, I'm excited to have a trip to go do this big event. Yeah, I mean, the round question is not a good question to ask of a fighter anytime. But also, like, just be assertive. He was so, like mealy-mouthed in his assessment. You need to walk up to the guy and be like, make eye contact with me. Act like a ref. Like, look at me. I need you to tell me where you are. What day of the week is it? Like, these are the questions you ask, but you need to, like, make it clear that it's, like, really important he answer these questions. Because it just didn't seem like Johnny Walker, he just thought it was like a given. Like, they're going to do this thing, whatever, it's some rigmarole. We're going to get back to, even when the ref waved it off. And I don't think it's because he was confused because of the concussion. I think he just didn't realize that they were considering stopping the fight. He just thought it was like a perfunctory business that was going to be done with, and then he could get back to the thing he was clearly still thinking about. He spent the entire time looking across the cage at Magomed Ankalaev. Like, barely paying attention to what the officials were doing.
Yep.
And then afterward, him and Ankalaev continued trying to keep fighting each other.
Of course.
Which I thought was awesome. The cage was just crowded with people, and he was trying to do like a verbal agreement with Ankalaev, who was down, you know? To resume the fight with 30 other
Ankalaev
people.
Is like, not again, no! I mean, it's going to be the same as the Kusalama thing. They're going to have to put this into like a fight series. And weird stuff is going to happen. It's going to like cause it to be cancelled at least twice. It's going to have to be this like white whale that they chase is the full fight of Johnny Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev.
Yeah.
A fight between someone who is good and someone who is not. And all it's going to do is like waste a giant chunk of Magomed Ankalaev's career and hopefully be funny.
Yeah, well, yeah. If the last series.
And meanwhile, Alex Pereira will be obviously becoming UFC light heavyweight champion, and it'll just be like, man, I'm glad no one in this division can wrestle.
Yeah. My God, what?
As Ankalaev attempts to get booked for the Johnny Walker rematch for the fourth time.
Just an unprecedented shit show. And we have to make clear here before we move on to our, to ending the show, but in reality, we're going to continue talking about this undercard in a bonus context, so check out the Heavy Hands Patreon for that. We have to make it clear that when the UFC goes to Abu Dhabi, they hire the officials.
Mm-hmm.
There is no governing body that oversees combat sports. There's no boxing commission or MMA commission or something like that. They bring in these officials. So who the fuck did this doctor pay off to get brought in for something that, I mean, I will be very disappointed if I discover this isn't true. My assumption as of right now is that this man has never worked a combat sports event in his life. Or if he has, he's gotten lucky and hasn't actually been called on to embarrass himself and just throw a massive wrench into the works.
Yes, I'm assuming, like, Dana has already said, well, it wasn't a very experienced doctor, was it, kind of thing, in one of his favorite rhetorical tricks to pull in these situations, which is the man in the hot dog costume, we're trying to catch the guy who did this.
It's everyone's fault but mine.
Yes. It's like, who could have hired this person? Your company, Dana. Your company.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, he did. Were you aware that he had done that or not? You were just guessing.
Yeah.
You were guessing. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was pretty sure that he had, yes.
Yeah, criticizes inexperienced doctor. Yeah, the UFC brought in every official who officiated this event. It is on them. You have zero excuse to bring in an inexperienced official.
Yeah,
zero.
Much like the old, hey, pussies, we're rescinding the flag ban. I don't know if that's gonna get your panties in a bunch, you bunch of liberal losers. But yeah, you can say what you like about, oh shit, Israel-Palestine conflict, you say. Abu Dhabi, you say.
Yeah.
Sorry, banned.
Was there any reaction? Because a lot of fighters did voice their support for Palestine on this card. Quite a few, including, I think...
but they didn't have any flags.
They weren't allowed the flags.
So those are banned.
Wait. They did? They re-banned flags?
Yeah. No, they rebanned them
Oh my God.
You know, 3 weeks after Dana was preening about,
oh my God.
how, pussies wanted the flags banned, but no, they were back, baby.
Yeah, Dana is the pussy. Dana's the pussy who rebanned. I didn't even know that.
Of course. Of course they did.
Jesus Christ. What a... All right. I have no words. And that will do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. We thank you all so much for joining us. I'll take this, Phil. I'll take a card that is like not necessarily good throughout, but is weird in such a distinct way as to be interesting of its own accord, like in its own right, I should say. Like the whole card had a vibe that sort
of bitter and unpleasant, but definitely interesting.
I will remember it. And once again, Islam Makhachev, pound for pound number one. I don't know, not super interested in having that argument, but clearly one of the most impressive performances of an all-time impressive career. He basically just continues to get better or reveal new depths to his game. And I cannot wait to see him defend the title next, whether it's against Charles Oliveira, as slated originally for this event, or somebody like Justin Gaethje. Whatever. I am down to see Islam Makhachev fight absolutely anybody. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, find us on Twitter, at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. You can also find me on Blue Sky at King Typo. Make sure you check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. We recorded a very long bonus episode, covering all of the rest of the weirdness on the undercard here. And also a nice, long, and well-deserved discussion of Edson Barboza's legendary comeback victory over Sadiq Youssef from the weekend before. So make sure you don't miss that. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back next week with Kyle McLaughlin to talk about Fury and Ngannou. And I don't know. I suppose we'll be looking forward to some other shit as well. I haven't bothered to care yet.
Hooray!
I'll care by then. I promise. All right. That's next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.